Ash Ketchum, the man, the myth, the legend, the guy who thinks therapy is a Pokémon.
You mean there's some kind of new Pokémon called Therapy?
And the world champion. A little over a year ago, Ash Ketchum beat all the memes and became the world champion of the Pokémon world. He showed the world both his skills as a trainer and the amazing abilities of his Pokémon. Ash has had a lot of Pokémon through his 25-year tenure. We of course always hear about Pikachu, Charizard, Infernape, Greninja, Lucario, and so on. And while these are remembered well in their own right, Ash has always had way more than just them. Ash has had so many Pokémon throughout multiple generations that some are bound to be more remembered than others. So what about those Pokémon that others don't think about? The ones that you gotta remind people that he had. That's what we'll be covering today. Here are some of the forgotten Pokémon of Ash Ketchum.
Gotta catch 'em all! Gotta catch 'em all! Pokémon!
Now let's lay down some ground rules first. When I say forgotten, I don't mean bad. I like most of the Pokemon mentioned here, or at the very least don't hate them. Also, the level of forgotten will vary on some of these mons. Some being Pokemon Ash had for a day, and others being just team members that weren't utilized that much. There's also a few Pokemon classified on Bulbapedia as temporarily owned by Ash, but I'm not going to be counting them for this list. We'll be starting out in the Kanto arc. Within the original season, it's what introduced a lot of kids to the franchise, meaning that a lot of these Pokemon will be memorable by default. So who do we pick? Well, if you remember a previous video of mine, you may know that I mentioned that Ash owned Eradicate for about 5 seconds. I was exaggerating the length, of course, but it's for less than an episode. Ash and Co are on the Stainan. This Mustachio Man challenges Ash to a battle, to which he uses Butterfree. Afterwards, he offers to trade his Raticate for the Butterfree. Ash is reluctant at first, but ends up going through with it, meaning yes, Ash officially owns this Raticate. Now, I don't even need to explain why this is forgotten. It was a trade of a more iconic Pokemon of his first catch, for a Raticate he owned for half an episode at most. Heck, even Ash forgets he had it.
Go Butterfree! Eradicate! Huh?
That clip is the extent of the screen time this thing had when under Ash's command. Ash quickly regrets this trade, and literally while the ship's sinking, he trades it back. This really does show how dedicated he is to that Butterfree, and does add an extra bit of emotion to Bye Bye Butterfree, which happens later. But yes, the most forgotten Ashmon is a plot device to introduce the mechanic of trading in the show, a mechanic that would only be used a handful of times. But for a Kanto Pokemon he owned longer than half an episode, that would be Primeape.
Alright! Primeape is mine!
I didn't even know Ash owned this thing until I was a lot older. He basically has it for 4 episodes, and it's only used in 1 battle after being caught, and it's the one he's released in. Seriously though, Ash gets this huge powerhouse, he enters this fighting tournament, beats the guy, and then the guy is all,
"Why don't you let me train it for a while? I promised to turn it into a real P1 champion."
Bitch, Primeape already is one. Ashy boy, you got fucking scammed. Pretty sure Anthony is a stand-in for the Prince of Nigeria. And I can't neglect to mention the boxed mon of Kingler. Kingler was legit probably only caught to show that Ash can't carry more than 6 Pokemon. His most memorable moment was coming into the Kanto League to sweep before evolving. Muck is able to stay off this list mostly for the gags of it just attack hugging Oak and having much more strong battle moments. Now let's look at his Johto team. I always loved this team. They never stuck out to the public consciousness as much as Ash's Kanto team, but they all had their own charm. Dancing, shininess, and whatever this is. But who do we put on this list? I got it! We'll put
Chica!
I wasn't gonna say Bayleaf, little Chico.
Chica!
I was listing examples of the Johto mods, not all of them. Just because I didn't mention her doesn't mean she's gonna be a forgotten one. And stop simping her!
Chica.
And yes, Bayleaf's #1 Ash Lover 49 energy. Now who we're actually putting on the list is a case similar to Raticate. During Johto League Champions, Ash entered the bug catching contest. You know, that contest in Gold and Silver with that stupid ass scoring that pisses people off? That one. Well, Ash, despite all odds and how it's portrayed in the games, wins the contest and is rewarded with the Pokemon he caught to win it, and in this case, it's a Beedrill. What? Do I say it had to be a Johto Pokemon? Just that he caught it in Johto, and Beedrill fits the bill. So basically, Ash won this Beedrill along with a Sunstone, and I guess because this is Johto and the writers wanted him to have Johto Pokemon, they have Ash give it off to Casey, who has a love for yellow striped Pokemon. Honestly, more fitting. Ash already caught a much cooler bug type anyway, who totally should have been on the whole team this arc. I could also see an argument for Heracross and Phanpy, but the former's personality is that strong, and the latter got utilized really well in Battle Frontier.
I'm unbeatable, Pokémon.
Personally, the Hoenn arc was always one of my favorites of the show, though that's because of that good old nostalgic bias. This was the first series where Ash started a region with a clean slate, meaning he started boxing all of his previous squad at Oak's Lab, and only traveling with Pikachu. While it's sad to see, it does lead to the new Pokemon getting much more time to shine, and shine they did. Ash had a badass grass type in Sceptile, a funny hothead in Corphish, even Torkoal was a hilarious meme with how many L's it had. However, there is one team member I specifically remember for not being memorable. This is Glalie. Yeah, I bet you forgot this one. Ash caught it as a snow runt in this episode aptly titled,
Let it snow, let it snow, let it snow runt.
Yeah, that one. And as a snow runt, this thing's an adorable goofball. However, this comes at the expense of something I like to call sixth-member syndrome. Basically, it's when you're the sixth member of a Pokemon team, usually caught closer to the end of the arc, and thus you naturally don't get as much screen time. At the time Ash caught Snorunt, he already had 7 Hoenn badges. It does get one gym battle in the Sootopolis gym, but that's it for gym battles. The main focus of it through its short tenure on the show was Ash trying to get it to learn Ice Beam. That's it. They spend multiple episodes on it that lead to admittedly funny gags of failure.
Okay, so maybe I was wrong. Snow run.
It eventually masters it right before the Hoenn League, during the Hoenn Grand Festival actually, via evolving into Glalie. Literally 2 episodes before the Hoenn League, and the only set of episodes for it to really shine as a Glalie. It does have some cool battles within the league, but that's really it. Ash does go to try for the Battle Frontier after this league, but the writers made this strange decision to have Ash box Glalie here. I know it was to make room for other team members, but the decision to do this with Glalie was kinda odd. It was a later addition. You'd think they'd do it with someone who's already gotten enough screen time. I get boxing Torkoal, cause let's face it, it sucks, but Glalie feels like it was being robbed of potential battles it hasn't gotten enough of. Heck, it's even more of a low blow because way later on in Diamond and Pearl during the Sinnoh League, Ash uses his old Pokemon for it. He was actually gonna use it in the battle with Conway, but then...
Did Ash switch Pokemon because of a strategy change?
Yep, it got screwed over. Ash ended up using a different lineup for this battle. This does include the next Pokemon we'll be talking about, which is...
We will win the battle, galactic battle, Pokémon!
Gible over here! Now, Ash's Sinnoh team is one of the most well-rounded ones. Pretty much everyone here is memorable in some way. Even Torterra, who progressively got worse in battle as it evolved, is able to skirt this list. However, we're back to another case of 6-member syndrome. Gible was caught when Ash already had 7 Sinnoh badges, but it wasn't even used for said 8th gym. Not to mention had a total of 2 battles in the Sinnoh League, the previously mentioned fight with Conway and the fight with Tobias. The main thing Gible's remembered for is its long journey to master Draco Meteor. If anyone's gonna remember Gible's legacy, it's poor Piplup over here. It's kinda sad, really. This is Ash's first Dragon type, not to mention his first pseudo-legendary, and it didn't get enough time to reach its full potential, being caught a bit too late in a series where it'd be much harder to properly pace an evolution development, and well after every other team dynamic is established. Heck, Gliscor stands out more than Gible despite leaving for a good chunk of the season.
We forgot Gliscor!
It's probably why when people think of Ash's Sinnoh team, it's usually the team he used to battle Paul. Poor Gible though, I'll always love you, little biting gremlin.
It's our destiny, Pokémon!
Now on to our last set of Pokemon. Sorry I'm cutting it here. I tried to pick a Pokemon from each region, but when I tried to think of anyone after Unova, it kinda just turned into who stands out the least out of an army of greats, mostly because Ash ended up having teams of Pokemon that were either so solid and memorable, or just stood out with their strong personalities. Even the heavily criticized Journeys team managed to stay off this list. Like, the least memorable there would probably be Dracovish, but just being on the world champion winning team and having this dopey personality was enough to keep it off. So now we'll get into probably the most controversial team, the Unova team. Now, out of all the many seasons or arcs of Pokemon, Univa's probably the one I'm the least knowledgeable of. I was falling out of the anime at the time it was airing, not even because of the common complaints people had with Best Wishes. I was just getting fixated on other shows and games, so the Pokemon anime kind of fell to the wayside. This, however, does mean I'll recognize the least amount of faces here. I do a few. Snivy's sass was amazing, and Oshawott, while being kind of a Piplup 2.0, did do enough to stand out on his own. What also makes this one more difficult is Ash did his team setup a bit differently this time around. He got more than 6 Pokemon and actually rotated them. This was a very experimental season, and not everything they tried panned out with viewers, but I do still appreciate some of these ideas. This, however, did mean more Pokemon had to fight for screen time. And the 2 Ashmons that suffered the most for this are Boldore and Palpitoad. Now, one thing I've noticed is that when Ash has a team for a certain region, he'll usually catch the region starter and then prioritize using that starter. This has been a mainstay since Gen 1, and for Gen 5, Ash caught all 3 Unova starters. So naturally, they tended to take the center stage and they were much easier to promote the shiny new games with. Boldore has nothing too significant. There's a couple gym and league battles, its most notable moment being during the Driftveil gym, being the MVP of that battle. But that's basically where it peaks. Palpitoad's arguably in a worse state, not even having much noteworthy outside of a few battles. And to me, its most memorable quote-unquote battle was when Ash infamously brought it to the Nimbasa gym, and only it.
Ash's strategy was just Palpitoad?
Well, if I had to guess, yes.
When your most memorable moment is a dumb-brained Ash moment, that's sad.
And now, our feature presentation.
But now onto the least memorable Ashmon. This one trumps all. Half an episode Mons, one-offs, borrowed Pokemon, this trumps all of them. I present you with Tauros number 19. Ash has never used Tauros number 19, or 23, or 7, or 14. Ash has only used his 30 Tauros for a handful of battles in the whole show, and let me tell you, that number is less than 30, meaning that it is statistically possible for Ash to have used all of these guys in battle. It's also unclear if Ash only used just one or switches the Tauros every time. Science points to the former, which is even more sad for the other 29. The injustice to these Tauros will not be left in vain. We must acknowledge Tauros 2 through 30, the most powerful, important, and personality-filled Pokemon in Ash's entire roster, have been collecting dust in Oak's lab for their entire tenure. So in honor of the awesomeness of Tauros 2 through 30, please comment down below your favorite thing about Tauros. We must acknowledge and honor these bulls. Hashtag justice for the other 29.